Well, I think the generals have to listen not only to the international community, but first and foremost to the people of Sudan, who've made very clear with their voices, that have come out onto the streets, that they want a resumption of the civilian-led transition, something that was historic, something that was putting Sudan on a very positive path to democracy, to freedom, to greater prosperity. That process was interrupted by the military takeover. And what's most important now, and the military leadership is hearing this from its people, and it's hearing it from the international community, is to put that civilian-led transition back on the track.
General Al-Burhan has said that he remains committed to realizing democracy in the country. But, you know, reading everything that he's doing, he has appointed a new sovereign council without consulting the civilians. Does that speak to that commitment? Are you concerned about the signs that they're sending?
There's a big gap between the stated commitment and the actual actions, the deeds. The Prime Minister himself is, I think, a source of real legitimacy, and he needs to be restored to his position. And at the same time, releasing people from detention is vitally important, and critically, stopping the violence. The fact that, again, yesterday, so many people were killed simply for raising their voices in support of the democratic transition is totally, totally unacceptable. The resources needed to help carry Sudan forward are understandably suspended given the military takeover. What we want to see is the civilian-led transition back on track, the support from the international community then resuming, and this process, which is really historic, remarkable, and answers the strong desires of the Sudanese people, can move forward.
You have been talking about the situation in Ethiopia. What's your prognosis of the situation there?
The situation is very challenging because there's a real risk if this continues, if all sides continue to believe that there's a military answer to their problem, then we really risk seeing violence increase, suffering increase, and potentially the state, Ethiopia, pulling apart. And so this is of deep concern, not only to us, but to many countries in the region and around the world.
You have applied pressure, including by denying access into the U.S. market to Ethiopia, but aren't you aiming at the wrong target? Because the people who are going to suffer are the tens of thousands of people, mostly women, who work very hard to make sure they have the best products for the U.S. market, and now they are threatened with the loss of livelihood, and yet they have nothing to do with the war. They could actually be victims of it.
First, under the terms of AGOA itself, a country that is engaged in serious human rights violations can't benefit from AGOA. And so, as a practical matter, if what's happening in Ethiopia continues, as we've said, by January 1st, we will have to, under the terms of the law, take away the benefits that flow from AGOA to Ethiopia. Those benefits normally would continue until 2025. And as to the people directly affected, of course, we feel deeply for them, which is why, in the first instance, we're trying to make sure that the humanitarian assistance that they need and that are being deprived of in many parts of the country that are in conflict, that gets through. And we're also standing up for their rights.
What's your message to these women, mostly, who work in those factories, you know, stitching fabrics that end up being sold in the U.S. market, and now they know that from January they may not have jobs because of the actions that you have taken?
Our message is we're going to make sure that we're doing everything possible to, in the first instance, ensure that assistance is actually flowing to people who need it, and as we're working on this, and hopefully as Ethiopia begins to move forward, also find ways to support